Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. So, I reckon one of the greatest mysteries, not only this Premier League season, but perhaps the modern age, more so than the lost city of Atlantis, the Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster. It's probably how in the world are Tottenham Hotspur fourth in the table? I genuinely cannot tell you why the Premier League table right now tells you that Tottenham Hotspur are the fourth best team in England. It's mind-boggling. I just don't know why. They've lost almost as many games, 9, as the three sides above them combined. I think they've got 10 between them, the three above. Yet, weirdly, if you look at the table, it will also tell you that they've got joint third most wins this season, 15. The third highest goal tally, 53. Albeit that's 20 fewer than the top two. It's like the table lies. I refuse to believe what it's telling my eyes because none of it makes any sense from what I see on the football pitches most weeks. I don't know. Maybe it's an indictment of the season as a whole in terms of, it's just a mess of a season with the World Cup shoved in the middle. Maybe just loads of other teams are having an absolute nightmare with it. I don't know. You can tell I'm a man that's come back from Goodison Park, looking a bit knackered and having to obviously rewrite stuff because of late things that happened in the game, which were really unhelpful to everything. I mean, Spurs could have been third. That's the ridiculous nature of it all. Right now, you've got third, fourth, and fifth place all on 50 points, and Spurs are right slap bang in the middle of them, albeit with teams below with games in hand. Although there's a few games to be played tonight after this that may yet affect it in differing ways. Oh, it's just a crazy season. I was looking at the away form table as well because I thought, Spurs that I've been to most of these away games, Spurs have been rubbish. Spurs are fourth in the away form table, as in across the whole season. I don't understand. Well, let me give you the numbers to this because it is, when you drill down to it a bit, they've only won 5 of their 15 matches on the road. Yet that's the fourth best away record in the Premier League, having only won 5 games out of 15. Just to give you context of what it means to have a bit of consistency to your season, Arsenal have won 11 of their 14 matches, and I think Man City have won 8. Yeah, Newcastle also 5. It's mad. But it's mad. All the numbers are weird. It's just I'm starting to distrust numbers of any sort because we know what the mood's like around Spurs. In the club, outside the club, everything. Yet Spurs have only lost 2 of their last 9 Premier League games. Honestly, it all makes no sense to me. What I'm seeing and what I then look at, because people that don't watch Spurs regularly are kind of saying to me, why is everyone moaning about Spurs? And it's like, it's really difficult to explain when they're only looking at the numbers and the stats and the table and things like that. You just want to lend them your eyes for a moment and then show them what watching Tottenham Hotspur and reporting on them has been like this season. It's just a mad experience, absolute mad. I mean, last night, I just had this depressing inevitability about it all. I sat next to Guesty. Obviously, if you listen to the podcast, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, Guesty is an Everton fan. So this was the Rob Guest derby. But both of us, as Spurs were absolutely playing against 10 men look like it was the toughest task in football. We were both looking at each other or talking to each other, and we were watching the game, not just staring at each other. He was saying, Spurs really don't deserve to take the points tonight. And I said, you know what? I don't really think either side do. I think a draw would be a fair result. So it's entirely my fault. I came out with that expression, and lo and behold, in the 90th minute, bang, that Michael Keane shot, which, to be fair, it was a cracker. Yeah, of course you could argue. You could always argue with long-distance goals that they should have been closed down better, but it was a hell of a strike, from centre-back. Apparently he's been doing it in training all the time recently as well, which is not what we want to hear, but, that's the truth. It's just madness. It's just mad. They just... I guess the way I put it in my piece that I wrote earlier is that if Southampton were able to come back from 2 goals down to draw 3-3, then Everton, with their rejuvenated Sean Dyche kind of battling nature that they've got about them, were always going to be capable of scoring a goal with 10 men, and especially with the crowd behind them as well. And so it proved to be. It was like the complete antithesis of Spurs with 10 men against Milan. You just never really felt that they looked likely to do it. Whereas Everton, there was a will and there was a way, and they did it. There's loads to talk about this match in different ways, and also other stuff as well. Because I did find some positives in the game, which we'll have a little talk about later on. But they're kind of buried so deeply among yet another rubbish end to a game that it just makes it feel like a defeat. And I think, from what I understand in the video I did about the Southampton game, I constantly kept referring to a defeat. So I'm very likely to do that about this game. So I apologise in advance for that. It was just weird watching a team that had no sense of how to stretch an opposition with a man less. Honestly, they looked like they had no idea. And from what I can tell, having kind of had to pretty much lead, myself and Charlie Eccleshiff in the Athletic pretty much led the press conference, because there was this scary moment where I asked one, Charlie asked one, and then it was just like, okay, no more questions. So we're like, whoa, we're not letting you get away with just 2 questions. But no one else were letting other people chime in, and they weren't. So we ended up asking about 4 or something each, just try and kind of get some proper answers out of them. And it seems that they were just having kind of communication problems, almost trying to get through to the players. Don't know whether it was because of the atmosphere, the noise. But yeah, it's not what you really want to hear either. It's not like... it's not what you want to hear. That sorry, getting messages. As I always say, apologies. You see me do the odd glance to my right. It's just so that I can make sure I've got all the latest information in the video, really, from anyone that might... little bits and pieces that I'll, I hear during the course of a day. But yeah, it was poor. It was poor against 10 men and not being able to even stretch them or create chances. This is going to go against what I think a lot of people probably... well, maybe not, but a lot of what people will take from the game last night. I didn't think the defending was that bad. I didn't. I thought the only way Everton were able to score was an absolute rocket of a goal from distance. Hugo Lloris, other than that, only had a gay save to make. One. That was all I can remember. My problem with Spurs yesterday was once again the attack. I think they kind of... I say once again, it's really difficult. We spoke about this in the Southampton game, where it seemed weird when they'd scored 3 goals to say, oh yeah, but defence let them down, which was true, but the attack could have scored so many more than those 3 goals. And against Everton, it just seemed to be a continuation of this real struggle to test goalkeepers right now. You could argue it's because you've got 3 up front and then you've got nothing creative really behind them. That could be a big part of it, but just briefly on touch on Stellini before the game. Stellini was really interesting in his pre-match stuff, because he kind of ran through the whole gamut of emotions. We had crying Stellini, we had angry Stellini, we had diplomatic Stellini. Lots of different versions of him. It was obviously a big day for him. It was... it sounds really patronising. It wasn't meant to be patronising at all. It was a big day for him. It was his first kind of press conference as the acting head coach of a Premier League football team. With no involvement from Conte or anyone behind, and people, was it like they're the puppet master or something? He was very much his own man, and this was his press conference to put his views across. So the tearful moment, I'll be honest, was... it was a lovely story. It really, really was. I was very kind of one of those moments where you feel really fortunate that someone's sharing this stuff. It was after the press conference. We had a little kind of sit-down huddle in the reception area outside the press conference room. There was only 5 of us journalists did that. And he sat down and he spoke. And if you haven't read my piece about it or anyone else's piece about it, he spoke about... it was during he had time out for, he had a ban with many other people for during the, I can't remember the full name of the Italian name, the match fixing kind of scandal. I think it was 2012-13, one of the match fixing scandals in Italy, and I think Conte got 10 months, knocked down to 4. Stellini, I think it was 18 months. So during that time, he couldn't do anything professionally. He couldn't work as anything in football professionally. So what he did. He went and got involved with a team in Turin that was made up entirely of refugees and asylum seekers. And it's a lovely story. He coached them to win this tournament. It's just this wonderful story about various players, such difficult backgrounds, such awful things that have happened to them in their homeland that we're trying to get away from. One guy actually hid, he was telling us, in the spare tyre of a truck, like hunched over in a circle for 24 hours, and they kind of couldn't almost open his legs up when he got back, stretch his legs out when he came out. And he had a goalkeeper with one eye who ended up being a bit the star of the show, saving penalties in the semi-final and the final. And it's just it was a remarkable story. But the moment he started to talk about these people, he started crying. Just tears rolled down his face. It was a couple of times during in the interview as well, and you could just see how much it meant to him and how much, I guess, his own problems were suddenly put in context. That was why he was kind of saying that he couldn't say that Spurs were in a crisis, because he's seen people that have actually lived through proper crises. It must be crises. And it was just, it was a really lovely moment. The Stellini having a pop at everyone in a bit of aggressive way, not aggressive way, on the attack in his press conference was a bit... maybe it's because he was having a go at media, maybe I'm being a bit protective, I don't know, but what was put to him was that Spurs have no men's first team coach, no women's first team coach, a managing director who since this last video has been banned now by FIFA, and has taken had the ban from FIFA. Now he's taken a leave of absence. So he is neither managing nor directing football. And a star striker, star best player in the squad who is approaching the final 12 months of his contract. So Stellini came out with you guys, you're trying to punch us. This speculation, you're trying to punch us, but we'll only get stronger. And it was like, I get what you're trying to do, a bit of a Rocky Balboa, it ain't hard you get here. I'm not going to do the impression, you Adrian. And then did it. It's purely only doing that because my wife was just watching Rocky 2 downstairs. I could hear it. It's like one of her favourite films. She loves the whole Adrian waking up thing in the hospital bed. But anyway, away from Rocky 2, he was clearly kind of trying to create this them and us mentality. But the issue was, and as was pointed out to him, it's not speculation. These are facts. There is no head coach of the men's or women's team. There is no managing director of football in place right now because he's taken a leave of absence, and your star striker is in the final 12 months of his contract. And breathe. That's just like some of the problems at Spurs right now as well. There's so many others. But yeah, so that was interesting, different sides to him. But I kind of feel like the biggest problem for Stellini right now is he's being pulled in all these different directions. There's one part of him that clearly the fans will want to see something different to what Conte was bringing in the last, this season really. They'll want to see better football. The performances have been quite dull at times, uninspiring, and obviously quite a few people are sick of being told how bad their club is, which I kind of have just done in a way, but you know what I mean. So you've got that side and a need to be different and to also be slightly disassociated with Conte, I guess. But then on the other side, he's being pulled by this decades-long relationship with Conte, where he has been, his right-hand man in 2-3 of his jobs as well. And obviously, so his press conference was kind of yo-yoing all over the place between, we did make some changes while he was away, to suddenly, we're not going to change much because we don't want to change the dynamic that Antonio made because it's got us to this fourth place. It's like, what are you trying to say here? Because you're making a proper mixed message of it all. Yeah, and it's also worth noting that, let's be honest, the likelihood, unless he were to win every single remaining game, is that Christian Stellini will probably not be the next Spurs manager. So with that in mind, he's not going to want to burn the bridge with Antonio Conte, because he very, very well may be Antonio Conte's assistant manager at his next club, wherever he goes to. It's such an awkward situation. It really is. And I understand his difficulties in doing that, but there's also got to be a part of him that does need to try to... You don't have to talk about it, but just try different things. And you must have some different ideologies as well, and philosophies about football. But I would stress, and he did say this in the stuff he was talking about in the press conference, is that you're not going to be able to do it in one match, 1 week beforehand. You are going to need a bit longer to get some of these ideas across. I suppose that's maybe what he'll say, is that he's got the benefit of having the continuity and structure that was already in place, so there's not upheaval, but he's able to sprinkle in new ideas here and there. That's the hope. We didn't see it on Monday night, but that's the hope. The only thing I really saw on Monday night that was vastly different was the need to take the shortest goal kicks ever seen to man. Whether it was just because they didn't want Hugo Lloris, I don't know, maybe putting his knee out again, or just hitting bad kicks in general, which we know Lloris can do, unfortunately. So what they were doing was Lloris would have the ball for a goal kick, and then Romero and Longley would stand either side of the 6-yard box, and he would pick one to pass to. Then they would either pass it to one of the wing-backs, or one of the central midfielders would come short. So the idea behind that, and I've heard other managers talk about this in the past, it was something Poch tried occasionally, was that it brings the opposition, if you feel like the opposition are a bit compact and sitting in a bit of a tight formation, it brings them onto you, but you've prepared for it. So you know that you're going to break them out and fragment them slightly, but you know where that ball's going to go for you, and the other players are very quickly able to transition into an attacking move around that team who were previously compact. The only way that works, though, is if you're passing the ball properly. And that was one of the issues for Spurs last night massively, was most of the time it reached the midfield, sometimes the flanks, it was just getting essentially hoofed upfield. Højbjerg sort of do a few times. Just these really kind of aimless, kind of almost, how do I describe it? It would just kind of curl the ball forward as if, someone would be running there, and there was no one there. And you could see this growing frustration on the sideline from not only Stellini, but Ryan Mason was getting very annoyed and very agitated. He was. If you've seen the video of him in that moment when Conte was bringing on Davinson Sanchez against Milan, the infamous moment, it was you saw him kind of doing all this stuff, like that kind of stuff. But he was doing a lot of that last night, but being quite angry with it and shouting at the players and stuff as well. And occasionally at Stellini, but I think people... I wrote a piece earlier where I mentioned that. I think some people were thinking I was saying he was going, Christian, you rubbish. He was not saying that. He was kind of... I think he was voicing his frustration at the players at Stellini and then going, like what are they doing, kind of thing. There was a few. There was before and after a Højbjerg ball. I saw him doing that and going a bit mad. He's quite a touchy-feely guy. So he was often going up to Stellini and putting his hand on his shoulders, like, what, why, and kind of thing. Look, we were all like that, to be honest, for a lot of the things that happened in the game as well. And Mason was not happy. It was like why are they doing this kind of thing? He just kept on doing. Don't get me wrong. Like Stellini was standing there, absolutely happy with everything. He was getting angry as well. There was one moment when Oliver Skipp intercepted a ball, kind of got to it with a header. It was in the second half. He was going back towards his own penalty area, but down the right-hand flank, Everton's right-hand flank, Spurs left. And he kind of headed the ball on and looked like he'd done well, got the ball back, and then suddenly he kind of panicked a bit with the ball. And it ended up, I think it went out for an Everton corner, if I remember correctly. And that was the theme with a lot, I felt, of the passing out of this short goal kicks, was that either the flank or the midfield were just frantically panicking. And you kept seeing Stellini going, calm down, just calm down. And it's difficult, isn't it? You can send players out with a plan and an idea of what to do, and then they just hear the noise of the crowd and just go, oh, I don't know what to do. And they just forget everything you've taught them to do or told them to do. And the worst thing about Spurs is this natural inclination to sit back, sit deep. It's not the coaches. Once in a while, yes, the coach may say remain compact and, it's better not to lose it than it is to win. We've heard that before from them. But so many times we also hear them saying, I didn't ask them to sit back like that. And we've heard it before. I mean, Harry Kane, I looked up the quote. During Mourinho's era, he said, it's never been the manager saying that we should sit back. It's been us on the pitch having a mentality where we want to drop and hold on to the win. The most important thing is us as players to go and take responsibility. And it's like, this was, 2-3 years ago? Now, Lloris, last night, when you look at the way we managed the end of the game, it should have been better, especially in possession. We could have kept them away from our goal with good pressure, but we started to drop as a team on the pitch. We dropped the intensity, and the red card didn't help the situation because the belief was back in that team, and until the end they pushed and they got the goal. But if you look at the overall performance, this is the most important thing. A lot of positive things, even if we could be able to create more chances. The only regret is that last 20 minutes. 1-0 up, we have the legs and the quality to go for the second goal, but we cannot play again. We have to move on, recover, because Saturday is going to be a tough game. And so when I talk about the small positive, that is what I would take from it, is that I must admit, my main concern going into this game was that Everton were going to be absolutely up for this game. They were going to scrap and battle in front of a noisy crowd, and they were absolutely going to just put so much pressure on Spurs that you kind of felt that if they broke, they would absolutely collapse. Yeah, as happened at the end against Southampton. But what I would say, and look, I know this kind of gets lost in the emotion of a late goal against you and everything, and I put it out there on my tweet that Spurs did actually show a bit of fight. And obviously lots of very angry people were saying, rubbish, there was no fight there, bottle jobs, all of this. And I understand it 100% where that frustration comes from. But personally, my view, I don't think the battling was the problem. I do actually think they battled for a lot. I saw a lot of 50-50 balls they were going in for. And as I said at the top of this, Everton were only able to find a way through with a shot from distance. That was it. They really could have crumbled Spurs, and they actually didn't. It was, look, like I say, if you're going to say anything was kind of a bottle job or anything, it was the inability to create chances against a team with 10 men. 100%. Like I say, please do not take this as me going, yo, what a positive result that was. That'll be a great point. It'll be looked to be a great point in the future when they look back at it. It'd be funny now if it is. but that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. I do think they absolutely threw away an opportunity. But for me, with what happened in the other end of the pitch, I actually think defensive-wise, I mark the defenders quite harshly. I felt my ratings once in a while, not often, but once in a while I'll reflect on my ratings the next morning And I actually felt it was a little bit harsh on defenders because they allowed very little to get past them, despite a lot of pressure and a lot of wing play as well that was quite, looked like they were getting in behind with Iwobi and Gray, McNeil at times as well. But they kind of didn't. And that was down to the fact that Spurs were scrapping with them a bit. I even said to Guesty at one point, this feels like a relegation scrap of a game. Like both teams are in the bottom three and struggling. Because they really are kind of trying to put what they could into it, or everything they could into it. But I get it. After you've just conceded a 90th minute equaliser, which feels like a defeat, people are not going to believe there's any fight involved, and they're going to look and be very angry. And I understand that. 100% I understand it. Because, I was annoyed myself. Apart from the fact that Spurs had chucked it away, I was also having to rewrite a lot of the stuff I'd written as well. But I still did feel they fought. And look, there will be comments under this video, no doubt. People saying, like, what are you talking about, gold? You can always tell when people are properly annoyed because they just use gold. Like, what are you talking about? There was no fight shown whatsoever. Once again, classic Spurs, Spursy, bottle jobs, all of this. I didn't actually see it like that. I didn't. There was a lot of other problems, but I actually felt like the fighting and scrapping was not one of them for a change. And that's not to say that's always the case at all. Like I say, Michael Keane's goal was a cracker as well. It was a perfectly hit shot, to be honest. It just swerved away. I don't even think Lloris could have done much. On Lloris, I know there's always going to be question marks about him coming back in because Forster had done all right. It's just one of those situations where Forster very well knew he's the backup keeper. That's what he signed up for at the start of the season. Conte made it very clear that Lloris would be coming straight back as soon as he was fit, and that's what happened. He's the club captain. He is. So, did I think anything he did was particularly wrong yesterday, Lloris? I don't think so. I don't think so. Even his kicks, he wasn't being allowed to really kick it long, so there wasn't even an option for them to be iffy. Could he have got close to the goal? I think that would be harsh, blaming him for that goal. Like I say, it was a bit of a rocket and it was swerving away. Even if he dived, it's just one of those where you can only watch it just kind of go in. But I get it. People kind of, I've had Spurs fans kind of that I know were messaging me saying he's got to get out the club right now. And it's just, that's harsh on him. It's like, yeah. Look, do I think that his time at Spurs is probably coming to an end? Maybe get another season. There's a bit of a handover season to someone else, maybe. Depends, I think, on what he wants to do more than anything. But do I think he should be sent in a cargo ship to the other side of the world out of Spurs? No, I don't. I don't think he did much wrong yesterday. But I get it. Again, I get the anger. We've all been there completely. And when you're so disenchanted and frustrated with a football club, kind of everyone's in the line of fire, and I get it. And look, again, there'll be people right now saying, what do you talk about? Lloris is rubbish. And I get it. That's why we all have opinions, and that's why football's such fun for other people supporting other clubs. What else is I was going to talk about? I was going to move on from that into asking the red card as well. We'll talk about the two red cards. So this was what I started the presser. Asked the first question of Stellini. I asked him, were you disappointed with your team that against 10 men they barely created anything? Or frustrated, I think was the word I used. He said, it's not easy to speak with a player during a game, but it's about their feeling into the pitch. We knew very well the strongest skill of this Everton team. Long balls, second balls and set pieces were aspects we needed to take care of. We did well for all the game, but 11 players, you have to control the game with the ball. We have to do it 11 against 11, but when you have a team like this in their stadium, it's never easy. With 11 against 10, it has to be easier than this, though. We were struggling to find the right way to speak to the players, to find the right solution to keep them calm. You have to be calm within the game. You have to have control, be calm. You have to be lucid. He likes lucid. I use lucid quite a lot. This is what we tried to do with the players. I think we didn't lead the game after the red card. We had the chance to control the game better than we did, because if you have one extra player, you have to lead the game, move the ball side by side. essentially what I was saying earlier. Just spread. It's just like a basic thing when you're playing Sunday League or, amateur Saturday football, even kids football. If you've got the extra man, they tell you to stretch the opposition, make them have to fan out and get down the wings. And then if you can get the ball in the box as well, you should have an extra man in there. Like I say, it should be basic stuff. But sometimes we were rushed, frantic. We have to improve in this aspect. We know very well it's a long process. We don't change it in one night. We change it in a long process. You've only got 9 more games, Christian. The key is keeping the ball, moving the ball quickly and finding the space to attack. This is the way we play the game with an extra man. You have to do it much better. It's about intention to keep the ball, to wait to find the right moment to score. We had some chances, but we didn't find a way to score. It's okay, but also you need players ready to move and to respect the plan. The plan was clear in my idea, and with one extra player, we can do better than this. Absolutely. To be fair, he kind of answered. He answered what I asked of him. He was annoyed, you could tell. It's a difficult one to say that the players... it's so difficult. To say the players couldn't hear them, they were trying to get their message across... I don't know. Is that an excuse in football nowadays? I don't know about that. If they've got a clear idea of what they're meant to do, but then, hey, as I said at the top, it sounds like under now a few managers, they've just dispensed with what they were told and just did their own thing anyway. At what point do they realise they don't know best? I don't know. It's like a retreat, isn't it? This kind of, not quite wave the white flag, although sometimes they do, and they just like suddenly all retreat, and they just pull back to the end of like this siege mentality on the edge of their own box, and it's a bit like, you're better than that. You've got attacking players that can go and score goals. You've got some very good players there. You've just spent £40 million on a right wing back who is a creative attacking outlet. Why are you using him as just a right back? That's just stupid. It's a very, very strange team. And it's going to take a very different manager or coach, I think, to get in there and just either completely change the way they play and give them such a strong, clear identity that they have no option but to stick to it, or you just take a lot of those players and lead them out the door and you change them for players that will listen. I think that some people might want both of those options. Yeah. So going forward, we're talking about the attack. I'm going to start with Sonny. Sonny. So I wrote this in my piece today because someone mentioned, I can't remember their name, otherwise I'd give them the credit. Someone messaged me on Facebook, I think it was, to point out they got the day just a little bit one-off, but in Korean culture, from those Koreans I know, led to believe that the number 7 is quite a lucky number. So, armed with the fact that Spurs number 7, Sonny, signed for the club 7 years ago, 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days ago. Yeah, today. 7 years, 7 months, 7 days ago, and he's the number 7. You would have thought that today we might be talking about Sonny got his 100th Premier League goal, yay! But unfortunately we're not. Weirdly, despite all of that, all the 7s, Sonny was not on the side of luck yesterday. He really wasn't. If anything, Everton kind of got lucky because, it's so rubbish to say because he's such a good player and he's given so much to Spurs. But honestly, I can't think of a single thing of note he did in the match. And that's probably the most kind of damning thing for me. I genuinely cannot think of one good thing he did. He was so ineffective. It's just honestly, it's the strangest thing that's happened to him. Don't get me wrong. I still believe he's going to come good again. I think he's too good a player to remain in this kind of dip that he's in for hopefully much longer. But, I just keep racking my brains to try and think of the reason because I know there's lots of reasons put out there, but I don't believe that they're all the case at all. I mean, he's one of the Premier League's best, Sonny. He's the reigning Golden Boot holder with Salah. He's constantly saved Spurs in the past. how has he just gone like this off a cliff? It's just absolute man. I've never seen him so low on a football pitch in terms of struggling to do the basics and really things that he would just do so easily before just not coming to him. When I talk about being the saviour for Spurs, Sung-Mo Lee pointed out some great stats to me. Sung-Mo, if you don't know him, a very good Korean journalist. He pointed out to me that Sonny has scored the first goal under Jose Mourinho, the first goal under Nuno Espirito Santo, the first goal under Antonio Conte, the first goal for Jurgen Klinsmann now as South Korea boss, the first goal in a Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in both the Premier League and Champions League. If anyone was going to score the first goal of the Christian Stellini era, it was going to be Sonny. But he didn't. He just didn't. And I was trying to look at the theories that everyone suggests for him, and one of them was Conte, playing him in the wrong way and the Conte influence. I think we can remove Conte from the discussion now because Conte's not there, and unfortunately, Monday night at Everton without Conte, Sonny was just poor. Was really, really poor. So right, take Conte out of the discussion now. I think we have to. And also, as I said before, he was in the best form of his career, of his life under Conte last season. So I never really quite believed that Conte was the problem. Perisic, of course, even Perisic is the other one that we hear, and that he pushes Sonny into positions that he's not used to playing in. Sometimes I see that happen. Sometimes I see them running into the same areas. But what I would say is, especially last night, just going on last night, Spurs were mostly kind of formed into a bit of a 3-5-2. Kulusevski was a little bit withdrawn. He was playing almost on the right of the midfield rather than the right of the three. So that really left Son and Kane as a bit of a strike pairing. Sometimes Sonny more advanced than Kane. And we've seen under Mourinho, that was where Sonny played, and he played so effectively with Kane. So I don't think it was the formation. Perisic was trying to find him with quite a few balls. I don't really feel like it was Perisic last night either. I've heard some people have told me, maybe it's the pressure of Sonny that he's now the Golden Boot winner, and it's like, how do you follow that up? How do you improve on such an amazing season in your career? And obviously, you go back to South Korea in the summer as well as like a proper national hero with your Spurs teammates and everything. But I don't buy that one either. Sonny lives with the pressure of being this national hero for South Korea all the time. And you see it comes up good time and time again for his country in matches. We just saw him score a couple of goals for Korea. The only thing I can think, it's just a confidence thing that has absolutely got so far embedded this season. I don't know, maybe he just needs to, assuming in sports psychology that they, use them at all clubs. I'm sure Spurs did. The only time I remember they certainly didn't was under Poch. Poch would say that his staff had the skills to be able to fulfil the same role. I don't know whether anyone actually had sports psychology qualifications, but there you go. But you would presume Spurs would have someone that now can sit with Sonny and talk through it. This is one of the best players in Europe. But absolutely everything he's doing right now, it just smacks of someone that just has lost a lot of belief in themselves. It's rubbish. And as in, it's rubbish for him. And it's rubbish for Spurs as well, because, having been a player that they could always rely on right now, at times last night, you barely knew he was on the pitch. And that's so not like Son. I wondered also whether, is it because of this big season he had last season, is he now a bit less of a secret weapon? Defences marking him more tightly? Is he getting even less time on the ball than he has? But the best players like Sonny, they learn to adapt to that. And I feel like in the past, he was, I think more people were aware of him anyway. Last season, he wasn't like, who's that guy on the wing? Oh, is this Son Heung-min? Looks quite good. No, I do think he'd already started to adapt to being more a concern, an equal concern with Kane as well for opposition defences. So honestly, it's the most mind-boggling thing for me. he was dispossessed twice, 2 unsuccessful touches, although actually Kulusevski had slightly worse stats than that. But the only thing I'd give Sonny is that even his display was paled in comparison with what Lucas Moura produced in the most ridiculous 7 minutes or so I've seen from a player. He came on the 81st minute, Lucas, ran around for 7 minutes, but like a bit of a headless chicken, didn't contribute anything of note, and then and I could kind of see him lunging, and I'm just thinking, what are you doing? No. And we all watched it back on in the press box on the little screens we got, and just we're all like, ooh, it was just such a bad challenge. Stellini had no complaints afterwards whatsoever. I don't think Lucas really did either. He went off pretty kind of promptly. It was a little bit the same as the Doucouré red card in the aspect of no one was really complaining about it. I saw some people kind of having a bit of a pop at Kane about it. It's like, really? It's a bit of a redundant kind of discussion that anyway. Even Sean Dyche was like, it was a red card. It's just like, there was no issue with it. It's like, why are we making a fact that, he went down the floor because he was slapped, pushed, whacked in the face, whatever it was. I just felt that was all like this weird little sideshow about something that didn't really matter. It was just my opinion. But yeah, it's Lucas was mind-blowing, and now he's going to miss 3 games. The way he went to Keane's ankle, I just had a little flashback in my head. It was very unpleasant. And it's ironic, of course, that Keane ended up being absolutely fine, a bit sore, and scored the wonder goal at the end. So who gets a chance now? That Arnaut Danjuma bloke apparently is a Tottenham player, so I've been told. I think he arrived in January, somewhere in the building. Maybe someone should dust him off and bring him out. Maybe even Romain Mundell might get a chance. Mundell, I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure how he likes that to be pronounced, but I did a little piece on Romain this week because he was, if you're not aware who he is, he's 19-year-old, turns 20 at the end of this month. Very versatile young player. He can play on either flank as an attacking player, but he can also play as a fullback or a wingback on either side as well. I think he mainly plays on the left, cuts inside to use his right foot, of course, plays in the Sonny role. And yeah, his contract runs out this summer. Spurs don't have any more options to take on it. There have been discussions and conversations about extending it, but like I say, he's now kind of up there in the first team. Spurs see him as a part of their long-term future. I guess they've just got to convince him that can actually happen, because there is this big disconnect with the academy and the first team right now, as I've spoken about before. So, it's not quite as simple as sign up, mate, you want to. Because these young players are having to be convinced, am I actually going to make it at Spurs? Because, it's a tough gig right now. But yeah, you might have seen there was a training video Spurs put out, and Romain was absolutely ripping most people to pieces. I think it was Højbjerg went in for a bit of a... I think some people thought it was Perisic, but I thought it was Højbjerg went in for a bit of a rough tackle on him, and he just absolutely went around him. And they're only going to show you kind of selected highlights, but he looked very exciting. So who knows? Maybe they decide let's give minutes to someone for the future in games, where it's coming off the bench, rather than Danjuma, who maybe is going to go at the end of the summer. But then also, I'd argue that's incredibly unfair on Danjuma, who needs to prove that this option to buy, there's a reason it's there. It's a bit mad. Look, it was always going to be awkward yesterday. I think there was a little bit of a fear, I wouldn't say around the coaching staff, but maybe just around the club, of throwing him in to what was going to be very hostile for him. Even warming up, I only saw him go out once, and it wasn't for long, because if you're not aware of it, he was absolutely about to sign for Everton, and at the last second sped down the motorway to... he didn't speed, but he quickly went down the motorway to Tottenham and signed for them instead, which obviously now is looking like an absolutely daft decision. But he wasn't to know that Antonio Conte was like, what? Who? No, you've already signed it. Oh well. He can do some training sessions. Actually, Stellini was asked about him. Let's have a look. it was one of the Everton journos, I think, asked, because obviously, as you would, you'd be like, well, you signed him, why haven't you played him? And Stellini said, Danjuma is one player. We obviously have 3 important players up front, and today we used Lucas, and then we had 10 players after the red card. We couldn't change. Danjuma is a good player. His effort is fine. We're happy with him. He just needs to wait for his time, because in our squad, it's not easy to play in the front 3. It's not easy for him. We understand him, but we are happy. It's a bit difficult one, because before the game, he was saying that everyone had a fresh slate and people frozen out would be able to come in and feel like they're going to play under him. I don't think Danjuma probably would have got that impression yesterday. Who else? As I said, Kulusevski for me felt like the one who was most likely to make something happen. He had some nice moments of nice little turns and driving forward with the ball, but really, really lacking in the final third. It really is a bit night and day, his last season to this season with him. But again, I can only stress a million times, he's 22 years old. Absolutely going to have periods like this where he just needs to adapt and find his groove again. You've got to give that kind of latitude and flexibility to young players that they are still very much developing. However good they seem when they first arrive, well, they are good. They just need a bit more time. But I know patience isn't the greatest thing in football, unfortunately. Kane was quite quiet, apart from the 2 big flashpoint moments. First one was the red card, obviously, and the second was a very good penalty after Romero was brought down by Keane. Keane was involved in everything, apart from the other sending off. But Kane stepped up, all of the Goodison crowd calling him a cheat because of what had happened earlier with him going down after the Kure moment. Everton players trying to put him off. It was the old classic. I don't know whether they were trying to scuff up the penalty spot. I don't know. Pickford, his England teammate, comes out to him and everything. And he hit the most perfect penalty just inside the left-hand post. The best penalties are the ones that kind of hit that inside of the side netting. They're such nice penalties. And this was a great one. Sent him the other way as well. Pickford. But other than that, it was just these little moments of touches where you could just see he's a cut above everyone on the pitch. He just gets the ball, spreads it out to the wings, and he's just so good at that. But right now, I'm just seeing a player that's just kind of thinking that. I'm not saying he's downing tools or anything like that. Not any suggestion on that. But he just looks kind of uninspired by everything that's going on at Spurs right now. And I can't blame him. I think we're all exactly the same. There's so much that's put on him to all of the creativity really has to come through him because Spurs have not got an attacking creative midfielder in the centre of the pitch. They just we don't do that. And it's putting so much on Kane. And sometimes you'll see him rise to the challenge, and other moments you just kind of look at him and you can see a man that's just thinking, why have I got to do all of this? I'm supposed to be up there scoring the goals. What are you lot doing? And it's really difficult. It's stuff needs to change inside that football club. If they got any or retain any hope of keeping Kane beyond his contract, it has to be a different Spurs for him to operate in. He has to feel like it's going somewhere, because right now he must just be looking at it and thinking, same old rubbish. It's not good. So this weekend, a very awkward game in every sense. It is Roberto De Zerbi's Brighton come to Tottenham Hotspur. What it really needs to not be is a massive clash of different styles. It really needs to not be like that, because Roberto De Zerbi has got Brighton playing lovely football this season. He's got them scoring goals, which is something they weren't doing under Graham Potter so much. You remember the famous, infamous phrase that Daniel Levy came out after the Mourinho era of, we're going to bring in a manager that plays open, attractive, entertaining football for you, and they brought in Nuno. De Zerbi is that manager. He absolutely is. So if he comes on Saturday with his team and they play Spurs off the park, playing the kind of football that Levy promised and failed to deliver, it's only going to make it all the more glaringly obvious, kind of just the mistakes that have been made with this team. And and decisions and things like this in front of 62,000 fans as well. Levy's abroad, or he has been abroad. Whether he's back in time for this game, I don't know. But I'd say this is one you want to watch. It's I don't want to go as far as say it's an audition, because from what I understand is the initial contact Spurs have had with De Zerbi's camp, they haven't got the most positive indications that he really would be like, yeah, all right, I'm up for that. That's not what I've kind of heard. I don't get the impression from everything I've heard that he's particularly desperate to leave what is a very stable project at Brighton. A very, I guess, an exciting one, a very well structured and planned and thought out project that he has at Brighton. For, let's be honest, the utter chaos that is Tottenham Hotspur right now. It's just, nobody knows what's happening in so many different aspects of Spurs right now. Why would you want to step out of a very well-run, well-planned club with a real clear direction and go to Spurs who are like, hey, what are we doing next, lads? Let's go that way. Let's go that way. Oh, I don't know. Where's the sat-nav? Oh, I checked out the window about 20 miles ago. It's just, I completely understand that thinking. Look, whether Spurs over the coming months have to get more convincing and absolutely make it a job that has to be, becomes more attractive for managers that are in very stable projects. And he's obviously got a big buyout clause as well. But at the moment, it feels very much like Graham Potter was in 2021. Just a reluctance to leave the security of a really good job for one that, yeah, there's plenty of potential. Spurs could be a huge club if you're the man that takes them on to the next level. But when you've watched managers fail who have got silverware and history galore coming out of their, pockets and CVs and everything, you're probably looking at it and thinking, what am I supposed to do with that lot? It's so I absolutely understand that kind of feeling right now, and if Spurs identify that he is the man they want, like I say, maybe Saturday will convince anyone that might have any doubts about it. Look, I hope Spurs go out there and absolutely fantastic and win the match, but if Brighton play lovely football, it is only going to show the powers that be just what a prospect he could be. I know people say, he's only been at Brighton for 7 months, but the Sassuolo, terrific things he was doing there, and look at what he was doing in his past as well. He's a relatively young manager, but everything he's done has had a real clear sign of progression in his career, and there's no reason to think that it's not going to continue. But hey, they've got to convince him. There are going to be other contenders. There's going to be other candidates out there that are going to be very good candidates. There are also going to be a lot of rivals for managers because of the jobs that are opening up now. Chelsea is like the worst job. I think Spurs would have been praying for Graham Potter to get good results because, you've now got Chelsea, who are a side that, they're not going to be in the Champions League, but they're going to be able to offer any manager essentially just like riches, untold riches. Come in, build your team, we'll pay for it, and it's whoever Spurs' top candidate ends up being. If Chelsea want them, the likelihood is they will go to Chelsea. It's as simple as that. It's even if Spurs get Champions League football, Chelsea is still a more attractive proposition. Sad to say, but it's there. Money talks, and also recent history of success talks. The only other one side is you could try and argue, but they don't stick with their managers. Hello, have you met Tottenham Hotspur? It's exactly the same, just without any success to back up that decision making. But hey, I'm not going to moan about that again because I did loads of that in the last video or the one before. There were a lot of videos in a short space of time. Look, they need a manager that gets Spurs playing in the right way. Nagelsmann would do that. Zerbi would do that. Luis Enrique would do that. Different kind of style, very possession-based play, but he would do that. Even the less high-profile options, Arne Slot at Feyenoord would do that. He plays some lovely football. I was speaking to kind of people in the Dutch kind of, I was going to say arena, in the Dutch game that have been saying very good things about him. He is going to be the next big thing. And I do wonder, after completely messing up with Ten Hag and leaving him hanging and not appointing him, whether Spurs maybe think, Arne Slot's, is it Arne Slot? Arne Slot? Someone Dutch, please tell me the correct pronunciation, because you know I never look these things up when I should. Slot is the next big thing coming out of Dutch football. So someone is probably going to snap him up at some point. Could it be Tottenham? Thomas Frank is another one that I know Spurs like. He's done terrific things with Brentford, and if he was able to bring that to Tottenham, I think they would instantly play good football, and much better football, especially with the people involved. You could argue, are some of those names the ones that are going to keep Harry Kane? Maybe not. There's a balancing act there as well, I guess. I know Spurs have explored the possibility of Vincent Kompany as well. He's very much at the younger age scale, of course. I think he's only 36. What I would say about him, despite his relative inexperience, he's got Burnley playing very well. He's just a bit of a winner, isn't he? He's got that mentality about him. And certainly Simon Davies has come into Spurs, head of coaching methodology, has made a really good impression from what I understand from people around Spurs. He's obviously it's a long time, a collaborator with Kompany at Anderlecht, and also at Man City, I think, as well. They were doing stuff in the youth. I'm trying to remember now. I feel like it's Anderlecht and somewhere else. But anyway, the key is he will be telling people, extolling the virtues of how good Vincent Kompany is. So, by all means, another person that could be a potential thought for the job. Although I'd be surprised if Kompany wants to kind of give up exactly what he's doing at Burnley right now, because, why not see through this little bit of the project that you're doing this and never see what it's like as a season in the Premier League as well. And the other thing with him, a bit like Gerrard and Liverpool, is that you'd always wonder, like, presumably he's going to go to Man City at some point. You're kind of almost like borrowing him if he does well. So yeah, we'll see. But I don't think it's any given that he'd want to give up what he's doing at Burnley right now. Obviously, we now have two new names on the market as well, in Graham Potter and Brendan Rodgers. Graham Potter's an interesting one. Aesthetically, it looks awful if you're continuing your trend of appointing Chelsea managers, but not only that, appointing one who didn't do well, although I guess they kind of did that with AVB. The flip side is, would you have taken Graham Potter in 2021? Absolutely. And I would have. Would you have taken him last summer? I think if Conte had gone, absolutely. I remember kind of him being one of the ones I was quite excited about. It didn't happen, of course. Like I say, he wasn't that sold on the Spurs job. Then went and obviously tried the Chelsea job, which was just the wrong job for him. It absolutely was. It's one of those where, if he's not too bruised by the experience, he could be a very good manager for Spurs. But it just doesn't look great. But whether, do you care about it, or does Daniel Levy care about that? I don't think Daniel Levy's ever particularly cared about how things have looked. Rodgers would get Spurs playing some good football. I've always got the sense, certainly in recent times there's been vacancies, Levy has kind of swerved a bit away from any potential of appointing Rodgers. I don't know. I think there was a chance, wasn't there, of maybe appointing him about a decade ago, and it didn't happen. I don't know whether stuff spilled over from that, and then he hasn't really been in contention since, despite trying to say lots of nice things about Spurs. I don't know. I think some people might accept him. I don't know. I would say personally, there's other people that I would probably be a bit more excited about, but I don't know. He's got good experience, Rodgers. That is one thing I'd say. Just the irony for me is that the one manager that the fans have been calling for, and I've heard them twice loudly. The travelling fans were singing Mauricio Pochettino, he's magic, But yet he seems like a real outlier for the job. It's like almost like there's, I don't know whether there's at this moment in time too many reservations from both sides about it happening. If I'm Poch, I am probably thinking, let's wait and see what happens in Madrid. That's another thing. Who knows? Chelsea might decide they want to go for Poch as well. This is the thing, isn't it? Spurs are probably waiting to see, because Chelsea are going to throw money at this. They're going to sort out their situation quickly. They may even go for Nagelsmann, who all indications were he wanted to break, and they might go, ta-da, throw loads of money at him and tell him exactly what they're going to do under him, and he might go, wicked, and just go right in there now. Who knows what's going to happen? And they're going to make Spurs look all the more ponderous if they do that as well. It's not going to... Spurs are going to look rubbish in comparison. Of course they are, because Spurs just don't go about things in the same way. You could argue in some aspects that's a good thing, but in aspects like this, it's only going to look poor. But the key is that they get the right person. Whoever it is, it needs to be the right person. We'll see. We'll see what happens. There's still more twists and turns, I think, in this whole managerial hunt and chase. Just not too many, please. Not a repeat of 2021. Just for now, it's all about Stellini and Mason and what they do. Can Stellini shake things up more than he has been? More than we saw last night. Continuity has been a part of the thinking behind putting him in charge. I think there's a logic that if you shook it up and brought in someone new right now, maybe they would need 4 or 5 games to put their imprint in. And by the time they did that, the chances of Champions League could be gone because there were only 10 games left. You could counter-argue that and saying, well, Conte came in and I don't think he lost a game for about 2-3 months or something. So that's not always the case whatsoever. But yeah. And it's interesting. Laurie's quotes very quickly I'm going to read out to you about continuity. Christian knows very well the players. He knows very well the club. He's just here to give continuity and try to finish the job as good as we can. It's also the responsibility of everyone, not only one person more than the other. It's players, coaching staff, medical staff, all the people involved to create the right energy. Last week in training was very good. It was positive, and we have to stay positive and try to recover the energy. And obviously results and wins give you more confidence, especially in this period that's decisive. He was asked whether Stellini can put his own stamp on things, and his answer was, he gives continuity of the style of play we're used to having in the last 18 months, but the focus is on this final sprint. We have to forget about the past. There was 10 games left with the willingness and the target to finish strong. We got 1 point today. The best way to give credit at this point is to win the next 2 home games. We know home games are very important, but step by step. I don't want to look too much forward because every game is a battle and you have to keep the energy and focus on Brighton. So not the most ringing endorsement that he's going to change up things massively. But like I said, as long as there's little tweaks and stuff. And I wonder whether Mason's voice gets heard more. Because I was looking back, Mason's 6 games that he had as a 29-year-old in charge in 2021, the Spurs scored 14 goals in those 6 games. It's got a lot of goals. They won, obviously, 4 of those 6 as well. So it'd be interesting to see, with Conte now out of the picture, does Mason's voice become a little... Well, it must surely become a bit stronger. And maybe if Stellini can compromise between the 2 styles, maybe they'll, I don't want to say stumble across, but they may find something that suits all parties. Because Spurs, they need to be shaken up a bit. It's... Not only do the players need the smiles put back on their face, and I think Stellini will do that. He's very, very popular among the players, and so is Mason. And I think they will do that, but the fans need to have smiles back on their faces as well. As I said before, fan base growing more and more disconnected, I think, with the club at every kind of passing week. Something needs to click again. I know so many Spurs fans are just like, I don't care. And that's the worst thing. Apathy is the worst thing. That shows that you're essentially making a mess of your football club. So, yeah, they need to get the fans enjoying it again. And Saturday's a big one. Like I say, Brighton playing tonight, so we'll see how they do. They've got Bournemouth. That's a tough game nowadays. Bournemouth, showing some real kind of good moments as well. Chelsea, Liverpool as well tonight. So that's another big game for Spurs. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Right, I'm going to head off now. Heading off to the cinema tonight. I see Dungeons and Dragons, which I used to love the cartoon as a kid. And the reviews are really good, so I'm going to go and watch that. Just trying to escape from Tottenham Hotspur for a little bit, which means something will break tonight while I'm in the cinema, but there you go. Hopefully not the projector. So I'm going to head off now. Unless something massive happens this week, and very much that could happen with Spurs. Probably won't do another video until Sunday. But yeah, in the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.